It is a great honor to be here today, and I'm joined by many other elected officials who serve this county and the state and the nation. Bill Schrag is going to introduce them in a few minutes, but I want you to know that you have members of the county legislature, municipal governments, city councils. You have Congressman Mike Law, all of whom are going to be introduced in a minute. And we as elected officials come with different demographic backgrounds, but we're all here to stand with you on this day of remembrance. When I was in high school, Mount Vernon High School to be specific, in 11th grade, I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine who was very good in science, and I was very bad in science. Real science, not political science. And we chatted once in a lunchroom, and I said, I don't get chemistry. I can't understand it. It's complicated. I can't grasp how we move forward. My Regents score later that year proved that. And he said, well, what do you like? And I said, I love history. And he said, I can't grasp all those dates. I can't memorize those dates. And as we talked further, I understood that he understood chemistry in a way that I understood history. And that history is not just a list of dates or who was in which position in which sequence of events, but it's a story that's told as a river flows. And that river flows to this day. We're here in a garden that has been set aside to remember what happened in a specific number of years in the 1940s in Europe. But that river started long before then, and that river flows to this very day in other ways. I took a few minutes of time to look up where this world was 92 years ago in 1932. 1932 was a presidential election year in the United States. It was the year that brought Franklin Roosevelt to the peak of power. It was also the formative year that brought Adolf Hitler to power. Adolf Hitler came to power in January of 1933, before Roosevelt was inaugurated president. And I looked at a timeline of things that had happened. I did not know that it was February 25th of 1932 that Adolf Hitler obtained German citizenship by naturalization that allowed him to run in 1932. He didn't win in 1932, but the wheels were set in motion. June 16th, 1932, Germany lifted the ban that they had on the SS and the SA. Both were banned prior to that point. But the rise of the Nazi Party and the strength of the Nazi Party in the German population made the government decide to lift those bans so they could work freely. A month later, July 17th, 1932, Altona Bloody Sunday. Nothing I knew about before I looked and went through this timeline. In Altona, clashes broke out between the police, the Nazi SA members, and Communist Party supporters at a National Socialist demonstration. 18 are killed, many other political street fights to follow. This turmoil was preparatory to what was about to happen. Over the course of 1932, Hermann Göring became head of the German parliament. Even though the Nazis lost seats in the November election, along with the communists, they gained overall support. In November of that year, President Hindenburg began negotiations with Adolf Hitler about forming a new government. And after a brief government in December of that year, by January 30th, Adolf Hitler became the Chancellor of Germany. And everything you see here, the names of these camps, the people that died, it all began in earnest when Adolf Hitler got the power to be able to implement the very things that he said in Mein Kampf. So many of us are accustomed to hearing politicians talk and saying they'll never do what they're talking about. They don't mean it. Adolf Hitler meant it. He meant it, and he proved it to the world. And it didn't take long I shared some of this once before, but it's bears sharing again. He comes to power in January 30th of 1933, and within a month, February 27th, 1933, the Reichstag is burned. The legislative government house, the check and the balance on the chancellor and the executive branch, burns to the ground. The legislature can't meet within a day. The Reichstag fire decrees are announced, and they nullify many of the Germans' civil rights. One day, less than a month after he took power. By March 1st, there was a Nazi roundup of political opponents, and you know the rest of the story. Day by day, month after month, the German people were told that the victims were actually the oppressors in the society. And because Joseph Goebbels goes down in infamy as perhaps the best marketeer that ever existed on this planet, he was able to propagandize and convince people that black was white, up was down, and that the actions of that government that led to these camps and the deaths in these camps was a perfect, acceptable way to rise Germany to greatness. If we were reading a story of history and reporting back at the end of the year test, the Regents exam, whatever it was, that would be the end of the story. That's not the end of the story. We have to learn from history. We have to look at the world that we live in right now, and incredibly, the country that we live in right now. Are we being told that now black is white again? Are we being told that turmoil is acceptable because there will be some greater good that comes out of the turmoil, not chaos? And I'm sure that many people who were not there at the time would question the people of Germany and the leaders of Germany. How could you let this happen? How could you let this happen in so short a time? My friends, that question is not a 1933 question, as a 2024 question. What are we prepared to do to make sure this doesn't happen again?